People in Ramsgate and Thanet are very proud that the gospel first landed here. Pugin moved to Ramsgate because, as he writes, blessed Austin had landed nearby. This captivated his romantic imagination, and he was fascinated by the figure of Augustine. In 596 AD, Pope Gregory the Great sent a mission to England. 40 monks arrived and landed in the Isle of Thanet. Augustine was their leader. The meeting between St. Augustine and King Ethelbert, who was the leading king amongst the Anglo-Saxon peoples of the time, is, in a sense, the birth of English Christianity, and to some extent the birth of the English nation. It began a whole history of civilization, of art, architecture, literature, law, all represented in that meeting. It seems fitting that there is another church dedicated to King Ethelbert in Ramsgate, and it's also fitting that this was created by a Pugin, this time not Augustus Welby, but his youngest son, Peter Paul Pugin, who in his own right is a great architect. In 1538, the shrine of St. Augustine in Canterbury, which drew pilgrims from all over the country and beyond, was sadly destroyed. It got caught up in the political turmoil of the age. But now that has been rectified. This year, on the 1st of March, the Archbishop of Southwark declared the Church of St. Augustine in Ramsgate, Pugin's church, dedicated to the saint, as a new shrine to honor the beginnings of Christian England, the coming of the gospel to our land. It's a great responsibility to be custodian of such a church with such a legacy, and in a sense continuing Pugin's dream with honoring the English saints who captivated his own imagination.
And it's the worship of Jesus by saints of all nations, which is the subject of our next hymn from Edward Pugin's monastery at Gordon.
My great-great-grandparents were Augustus Welby Pugin and his third wife, Jane Mill. They had a daughter called Margaret, Mattie, and she in turn had my grandfather, Charles, and Charles was the last architect in the Pugin and Pugin business. He was a man who loved his family, who loved having the children around him, and that was one of the reasons why he designed the Grange so well. So it was surrounding the family and became actually an example for future housing. He was married 3 times. Unfortunately, he lost his first two wives and was desolate by that. He needed company, and Jane Mill became his third wife. He regarded her as the true Gothic woman.
He was warm, he was ebullient, he wasn't particularly refined in his manners, and he wasn't particularly deferential.
He was a very driven man. He had a great attention to detail. Perhaps sometimes people could say he was a perfectionist. And during his very short life, he produced an incredible amount of work.
He worked very, very fast. I mean, he'd done 3 cathedrals by the time he was 30. It must be said that he relied very heavily indeed on a good builder, George Myers. He understood the structure of medieval buildings, so he could put in the right kind of foundations so that things didn't fall down. I mean, for Pugin, there was no difference between professional relationships and personal relationships. Everyone was a friend as well as a colleague, and he certainly wasn't a snob. Also, of course, it's much more practical once you've got a team together, a builder, a metalworker, a decorator, Minton up in Stoke doing the tiles. You all know each other very well.
Our next hymn comes from a church built by another of his contemporaries, Joseph Hansom. Pugin often complained that Hansom stole his ideas, and the design of St. Walburga's in Preston is certainly impressive, topped as it is by the tallest spire of any parish church in England.
What do you think his greatest legacy is?
I think it is the idea that architecture is a social and moral force. It's not just about putting up a building. It's not just about function. It has a role to play in the way that we live our lives. And if we feel there's something wrong with our cities, there's probably something wrong with ourselves, and you can't separate these things out.
He believed in Christianity in an active way, affecting the whole community, enhancing the whole community, blessing the whole community.
I think we all feel very privileged for the life that we've had, and I think that in return for that, it's fundamental that people are able to offer something to enable others to reach their potential. And I think Pugin had the same through the buildings that he built, insofar as if people could belong in these churches, if they felt safe and secure, the likelihood is that they would then be able to contribute, and in the end, through their prayer, through the combined use of the community within the church, to thrive.
That Christians should follow Jesus' example in actively supporting justice and peace is at the heart of our next hymn. The words are by Catholic convert, writer and social commentator G.K. Chesterton and are sung to an old English folk tune adapted by Ralph Vaughan Williams.
The hymn was first published in the English Hymnal, founded at the Gothic Revival Anglican Church of St Mary the Virgin in London's Primrose Hill.